I played some great games in 2022. I also played No More Heroes 2.
Downward fucking dog!
Fortunately, Grasshopper Manufacture also make games I actually like. The shining example of this is Killer7. Killer7 may not be for everyone, but if you're into it, you are into it, which is the case for me. It instantly became one of my favourite games ever after I played it last year, and so of course I want to talk about it. But it's unfortunately made pretty difficult by the fact that the game is massively complex. It's hard to know where to start with the game, but I've decided to take it chapter by chapter, so I can do the game justice and not be totally overwhelmed by all of its different moving pieces while trying to write these videos. And it works out pretty well, since each chapter revolves around its own subject matter. So, what is Killer7? Killer7 is a game where you control the Killer7, also known as the Smith Syndicate, a group of 7 freakishly powerful assassins. What's truly unique about the Killer7 is that its members are all different personalities with their own bodies, belonging to the same person. They communicate through TVs and security cameras to switch and carry out their missions. The game's story covers various jobs the Killer7 take on across the span of 2 years, with each chapter focusing on a different mission, beginning with Target Zero, Angel. Seattle, January 20th, 2010. Garcian Smith collects information from the Killer7's informant, Christopher Mills, and heads toward the Celtic building, the hideout of a terrorist organisation known as Heaven Smile.
It's me. So, you there yet?
You mean this shithole?
That's where they all hang out. Our information tells us that there's 14 of them.
And they're all for hunting.
Nah. Keep one alive so we can ask who the boss is.
Anything else I should know?
Nah, not really. You'll know when you see them. They're, different.
Will do.
Well, may the Lord smile.
And the devil have mercy.
The Killer7 have arrived. Under orders from the US government, they're to eradicate Heaven Smile and capture their leader alive. Though it quickly becomes clear that the job won't be as simple as initially planned.
I have been chosen.
Oh, shit. There's more than 14. Those bastards are breeding.
Angel is a chapter focused on introducing the player to some of the game's main characters and story concepts, as well as its gameplay. The gameplay of Killer7 sees the player exploring and solving puzzles in order to reach the Killer7's target, all while harnessing the powers of each personality to overcome obstacles and fight enemies. There are 2 difficulty modes, normal and deadly. Deadly makes enemies stronger and has a few other effects that make the game more difficult. The thing that sticks out immediately is the unconventional way you move through the levels. Movement is on rails, but that doesn't mean the game's levels are just single linear paths. You can turn around at any time in order to backtrack, which is required at various points, and you'll also often run into junctions where you have the choice of which direction to take. It can be kinda unwieldy at first, but with a little time you can get used to it. I mean, I pretty much don't even think about it anymore when I play the game. I just move through the levels pretty naturally as if I'm playing any other game with more typical movement. I like the movement. Not only does it feel thematically appropriate for reasons that become clear in later chapters, but it also works well with the game's combat, which makes up a large amount of Killer7's gameplay. The Heaven Smiles are the enemies you fight all throughout the game. They're zombie-like creatures with bomb organs that they detonate for suicide attacks. As you can guess, the basic rule of thumb for combat is, don't let them near you. It's simple on paper, but Heaven Smiles have many ways to get the upper hand. You can't move at all while aiming, so that immediately puts you at risk, and because of the game's movement system, you can't exactly dodge a Heaven Smile if it's right about to jump at you. So once you've started aiming, you kinda need to commit to killing every single smile coming for you, as you can't rely on a quick escape. One of the most defining traits of Heaven Smiles is also one of their most deadly, their invisibility, which they use to sneak up on and ambush you. The only hint of their presence while they're hidden is their signature laughter. The killer7 are equipped to fight Heaven Smiles, however, and so they have a method of revealing them. Garcian possesses the Vision Ring, which gives him the ability to scan for and reveal invisible Heaven Smiles, an ability that he transfers to every other personality in the killer7. The Heaven Smiles invisibility does a really good job of keeping you on your toes, especially when you enter a new room for the first time. You never know if you're about to step into a close quarters environment with a group of smiles ready to end you. Your only clue that you're in danger being the twisted laughter of the smiles makes you feel like they could come at any moment, making the game consistently tense. Heaven Smiles also gain the advantage by attacking in groups. They're easy enough to fight on their own and can be stun-locked just by shooting them repeatedly, but in groups they can quickly overwhelm you if you don't kill them quickly. Taking multiple attacks from Smiles in a short amount of time like that can be fatal, so speed is key in defeating them. It can be hard to defeat them quickly as there are various types of Smiles, including ones that run towards you instead of walking, ones that obscure your vision when they attack you rather than dealing damage, and even giant nest-like ones that keep on producing more Heaven Smiles. It may sound like the enemy has a large advantage based on all of these factors, but nearly every Heaven Smile has a massive weakness. If they're shot in their glowing weak points, you'll land a critical hit and they'll die instantly, which lets you thin down their numbers quickly and efficiently, although it's not trivially easy. The weak points are small, and if you miss too many shots you can end up destroying the limb where the weak point was on and losing the opportunity to land a critical. Critical hits are a great feature. They reward skilled players as they're not too easy to do, and are incredibly satisfying to pull off. Seeing a smile just evaporate into blood and hearing a voice line from the character you're playing as after landing a critical just feels so good. So, you may be wondering what tools the player has to deal with the smiles, and that's where the 7 personalities come in. The personalities of the killer7 have their own different weapons, as well as special powers they utilise by using the blood of Heaven Smiles.
Don't make me say it again. I'm a cleaner.
Garcian Smith is the group's cleaner. He may have a lot of health and a fast reload, but that's where his strengths end. In combat, he's by far the weakest. His silenced pistol doesn't deal very much damage, and so he pretty much relies on critical hits to kill Smiles. In addition to this, Garcian cannot switch at will, like the other personalities can. He can only switch at TVs and security cameras. The reason Garcian is so weak compared to the others is because of what he does in his unique role as the cleaner, which I'll get to later.
Wait here.
Dan Smith is the all-rounder of the group. His health is solid, his revolver deals good damage, and his reload isn't too slow. He possesses the special ability, Collateral Shot, a powerful shot used to destroy duplicator Smiles as well as instantly kill regular Smiles.
I've changed my makeup. Did you notice? Men. They never notice these kinds of things.
Kaede Smith is a personality well suited to handling critical hits. Her scoped pistol allows her to zoom in and accurately hit weak points, although the trade-off is that she has the slowest reload of any personality, which can leave her vulnerable. That combined with her low health means that she can die quite easily if you slip up, especially on deadly difficulty. She has the ability to shower blood from her wrist, which summons her servant Mizaru, who destroys barriers. Kevin Smith is a mute assassin who wields throwing knives. His knives may not deal as much damage as guns, but they make up for it because Kevin's aim doesn't sway at all, and he doesn't need to reload. Kevin has the ability to use blood to let him turn invisible, letting him move past Heaven Smiles undetected, although aiming will cancel his invisibility, so he can't attack from 100% safety.
What did you say?
Coyote Smith is pretty similar to Dan. His stats are all pretty similar, although he does move faster. He also has a charged shot, which, while not as powerful as Dan's, costs less blood to use. Coyote can pick locked doors, so he's useful for opening up shortcuts and making the levels easier to move through.
Later.
Peace.
Con Smith is the youngest member of the killer7. The keyword with Con is speed. His 2 fully automatic pistols have the highest fire rate of any weapon in the game. He moves fast, he reloads faster than any other personality, And on top of all that, he can use blood to do this.
Dangerous.
It's not really needed for anything, but it's fun. Con may not deal the most damage, but he makes up for it by being able to attack near constantly with his fire rate and fast reloading.
Destiny.
Masked Smith is a luchador with a pair of grenade launchers. As you can probably guess, he deals a load of damage, more than any of the other personalities. Mask could be considered the opposite of Con. His guns may fire slowly, but they hit hard, able to kill basic Heaven Smiles in one shot on normal, and 2 on deadly. Despite hitting hard, he needs to reload after every single shot, meaning he can easily be attacked while reloading, though his high health lets him tank more hits than other personalities. An additional weakness that Mask has is the inability to land critical hits due to his guns, so it's difficult for him to acquire thick blood. Killing Heaven Smiles grants the player blood, separated into 2 categories, thin blood and thick blood. Thin blood is used for healing and to activate abilities. You can hold less thin blood at a time on deadly compared to normal. Thick blood is obtained when destroying the limbs of Heaven Smiles, and obtained in greater amounts when landing criticals. It's converted into serum at TVs, which is used to upgrade the Smith's capabilities. Serum can upgrade 4 different attributes for each Smith: the power of their shots, their firing speed, and their aim waver reduction. Since Kevin's aim doesn't waver at all, he can upgrade his invisibility duration instead. The final attribute makes it easier to land criticals. It's hard to show in a video, but you can definitely feel it when you play. Upgrading criticals makes it feel like weak spots grow slightly larger. Because Mask can't land criticals, he can instead upgrade the radius of his explosions. Upgrading attributes also occasionally unlocks special abilities for the personalities, such as special attacks on crawling smiles, and the incredibly useful counter attacks. These instantly kill a Heaven Smile lunging at you and aren't too difficult to time, though they do come at the cost of not granting you any blood. Plus they can't be used against anything besides basic humanoid smiles, so they aren't too overpowered. When enough thick blood has been converted in a chapter, the blood machine will start acting up and remain out of order for the rest of the chapter. It was a good choice, honestly. It stops players from just fully upgrading everyone within the first chapter and breaking the progression. With all of their abilities and powerful upgrades at their disposal, the killer7 are a force to be reckoned with, though it's still possible to succumb to the onslaught of Heaven Smiles. When this happens, the game doesn't simply end, as only the personality you were playing as when you died will be killed. You'll be returned to the last TV you interacted with, and can choose a personality you want to switch to now that one of them is dead, and you can continue the level with all of the remaining Smiths. Because of the fact that each of the Smiths' abilities will be needed to progress through the levels, they can't stay dead forever. Otherwise the game would become impossible, and that's where Garcian comes in. As the group's cleaner, he doesn't engage in combat, and instead collects the bodies of their targets. His role also sees him collecting the bodies of dead personalities to revive them. While there's no limitation on Garcian's resurrection ability, it's best to simply avoid needing to use it, as going to collect corpses puts Garcian at a huge risk. He's not well suited to combat, so Heaven Smiles pose an additional risk, and because he can't switch to another personality at will without a TV, it means you can't fall back on any of the more capable personalities to reach the bodies. As you can imagine, if Garcian dies, there's no more resurrection, and when that happens it'll cause a game over, making situations where you need to revive a personality very tense. One wrong move as a significantly weaker Garcian could end it all and send you back to your last save, which could lose you quite a bit of progress, due to saving being limited to specific rooms. As such, death is best avoided at all costs. If saving being limited sounds similar to survival horror games, it's because the game absolutely has some horror DNA in it. Not just in its presentation and unnerving enemies, but also in its design. Levels resemble environments from games like Resident Evil in their layout and how they're navigated. They're full of shortcuts and doors to unlock, with key items to be found by exploring and completing puzzles. The puzzles aren't really difficult at all. They're nowhere near as complicated as the ones you'd find in other horror games, though they are slightly more difficult if you play on Deadly. As previously mentioned, another big bit of survival horror DNA is the inclusion of safe rooms. The safe room in killer7 is known as Harmon's room, a room that seemingly exists outside the confines of space, as it can be accessed from numerous locations in every level. Harmon's room has a TV in it, so you'll be returning there often to convert thick blood into serum and upgrade the Smiths. Additionally, you can also access hints and information about various things in the room. Like all horror game safe rooms, it's the location where the player can save the game. However, the player cannot save in every instance of Harmon's room. It depends on the maid, Samantha. If you enter the room and see Samantha wearing her uniform, you'll be able to save at that location. If she's instead wearing casual attire, then you cannot save at that location. If you play on Deadly, there will be less locations where you're able to save. The general objective in most levels is to locate all of the soul shells in the level. Every soul shell is needed to pass through the Vinculum Gate, a bizarre dimension that blocks off the locations where the Killer 7's targets can be found. With every soul shell in hand, you're able to enter the Vinculum Gate, where you must fight a new type of Heaven Smile before you can exit the gate and advance to the end of the level. The gameplay loop of Killer 7 is a really satisfying one. While it may not have the most complex environments and puzzles, it's still fun to explore and figure out what to do to progress. And, of course, combat and movement is super unique, providing an experience unlike any other game. Combat remains varied throughout due to all the playable characters and the constant introduction of new Heaven Smile types as the game goes on, and the levels are largely pretty distinct from one another. There are only two that feel quite similar, and yet they're still separated by differing moods and atmospheres. I understand that the unconventional gameplay won't be for everyone, but I don't think that the game is terrible just because it's not traditionally designed. Another important aspect of Killer 7 is its presentation. The visual style is immediately striking. The dark high-contrast lighting establishes a really moody tone, fitting for the dark directions the story takes. And the environments, rendered with simple colours and gradients, make the cel-shaded character models really stand out in any scene. The game was made in 2005, and yet it still looks great. The emphasis on stylization rather than high detail means it's aged really well. It's hard not to look at a Killer 7 and find it eye-catching, unless of course you're one of those people who hates cel-shaded graphics and thinks that only photorealism is good. In which case, you're boring and I don't want to be your friend. The stylized UI and menus also really stand out. I'm particularly fond of the TV menu. It's just really cool. What really completes the game's presentation is the soundtrack. Masafumi Takada did a phenomenal job with the OST. He created tracks which perfectly match the sinister, understated vibe of the game, as well as tracks appropriate for intense battles. Killer 7 is one hell of a journey, and Takada's music adds so much emotion to it. I can already see myself commenting on a load of tracks in future videos covering the next chapters. Not to mention, the soundtrack is pretty huge. There are about 70 tracks in the officially released soundtrack, but there are even more unreleased tracks that play in the game. Each chapter has a load of unique music. In some cases there are even tracks that play in only 1 or 2 rooms in the entire game, including this track, which plays in the area that I lovingly refer to as the Kitchen Nightmares hallway. Takada went all out with the soundtrack. You'll rarely hear tracks repeated throughout the game, giving each chapter its own unique musical identity. I love the gameplay and presentation of Killer 7, but I don't think either of them are the game's greatest components. The story is where Killer 7 truly shines brightest, and will be the primary focus of the following videos in this series. Since Angel is a chapter more focused on introducing the player to the game, it's lighter on story compared to later chapters, but that doesn't mean it's less interesting. Angel succeeds in its goal of introducing the characters in central conflict, as well as establishing the game's tone. Angel demonstrates a recurring theme with each of the chapters: ever-present death and an absence of life. The Smith Syndicate are a group of killing machines. The Heaven Smiles are walking bombs, literal weapons given life. And regular humans are scarcely found. In the case of Angel, every human in the Celtic building meets a gruesome fate. Besides the deaths that the Killer 7 witness, there aren't many cutscenes in this chapter, and they're mainly relegated to the beginning and end of it. As such, the bulk of the storytelling in Angel is done through remnant psyches, another important concept in the story of the game. While watching this, you may have been wondering what the deal is with the guy decked out in bondage gear hanging from a bungee cord. Well, dear viewer, that is, of course, Vincel Dilboris VII Iwazaruskov. Just call him Iwazaru. Iwazaru is a remnant psyche, a ghost-like apparition of someone killed by the Killer 7. Angel introduces the player to various remnant psyches that were all killed prior to the events of the game. The aforementioned Iwazaru acts as an obedient servant to the Smiths because he felt he was better off dead and is grateful to the group for killing him. Iwazaru provides hints to the player, as well as information about the story. In this chapter, he expresses concern for the group upon learning that the mission is going to lead them to someone he just refers to as him. Travis Bell is an assassin who seems quite knowledgeable about global politics. Travis was the group's first target. Despite this, he doesn't really harbour any resentment towards them. He seems pretty detached from things in general, helping the Smiths with information but not being overly invested in the outcome of things. Susie Sumner is an assassin whose remnant psyche always takes the form of her disembodied head. She's found hiding in various locations across the game, and when found, will give the group rings needed to solve puzzles. Yoon Yun was an informant for the group when he was still alive, and continues this role, even in death. He gives the player hints about how to solve puzzles, and possesses the mysterious True Mask. If you shoot the mask, it takes over, and provides more detailed hints in exchange for thick blood, though it doesn't exactly behave politely when it gives hints. Kess Bloody Sunday was a young serial killer in life, who now provides information about Heaven Smiles to the killer7. Remnant psyches only add to the ever-presence of death, as they're usually the only beings the group interacts with for most of the game. Their distorted, largely unintelligible speech only adds to their inhuman nature, and calls further attention to the lack of life in each level. Another way that killer7 delivers its narrative is through carrier pigeons that the player can find. They deliver intercepted messages to the Syndicate, written by an assassin and informant named Johnny Gagnon, addressed to someone named Amir. Amir is looking into the Smith Syndicate for unknown reasons, and Johnny provides him with a detailed account of every member, as well as providing him with a theory that there's a mysterious leader behind the group. Garcian may appear to lead the Syndicate, but Johnny states that he's more of a middle manager who is deeply loyal to the leader. Johnny's theory is supported by the words of the Remnant Psyches. Travis talks about being killed by the Chief, as if this Chief is someone separate from the main group. And while Iwazaru always refers to any personality that he speaks to as Master, he also ends every interaction by saying this. Harmon is a name that should be familiar, as the group frequently accesses his room. So who is he? The answer becomes clear at the end of the level, at the top floor. Garcian uses a camera and switches to an all-new personality.
Please, be careful, sir.
Harmon Smith is the leader of the killer7 and the main personality. He rarely participates in combat, but still comes equipped with some serious firepower, wielding an anti-tank rifle. Harmon can only be controlled in specific scripted sequences, and so he never fights any Heaven Smiles in gameplay. He usually appears to speak with his target before their confrontation, as is the case in Angel. Harmon comes face to face with the leader of the Heaven Smiles, though they don't even slightly resemble the man in the picture. More than that, it doesn't even resemble a real human. Speaking to the Angel reveals the true nature of Heaven Smile. It's more than just a terrorist organisation. It's a cult-like group dedicated to serving their gods and killing the unwanted.
I hope you are not one of them.
Good night, child. It's past your bedtime.
Harmon wastes no words on the Angel and destroys its wings.
You think you killed me? Better think again.
And so the first boss fight begins. It's a pretty simple one, you just need to wait for it to attack and then circle around it to shoot the faces on its back. When you've shot all 4 of them, you've won, so it's not too difficult. Harmon awakens again and proceeds, finding the Angel again in the next room, fully recovered from the fight. Shooting the Angel does nothing this time. The real target is the figure that appears behind it. What follows is, well, I just want to show the full scene.
Oops. I guess my trick didn't work on you.
Tricks are for kids, Coon. I'm an old man.
Yes.
Nothing has changed for 30 years. No matter how many times you try, the result will be the same.
Yes. Like our chess games. You always seem to win.
Do you know why?
You tell me.
Because you're a bad player.
A new generation of children will bring order to this age.
You're a good friend, but unfortunately, our interest is not mutual. We both have become burdened with so much, and we don't have time for fun anymore.
No, there's always time for fun. It's Friday night.
Let's dance.
Harmon Smith and Kun Lan, the leader of the Killer 7 and the leader of Heaven Smile, face to face. Their conflict has been ongoing for decades, and yet they seem strangely friendly, even mentioning that they play chess together. Despite this, neither of them will compromise. Kun Lan will keep on creating more Heaven Smiles, and Harmon will keep on destroying them. And so, Harmon fires.
The size of the world has changed. It's changed to the size where you can control it with your hands, just like a PDA. The world will keep getting smaller.
Once again, Kun Lan has eluded Harmon's grasp, and their long battle continues. If you're new to the game and confused by what just happened, don't worry so much about it. I was too when I first played it. Killer 7 isn't really a game that immediately makes its details super clear. Harmon's relationship with Kun Lan becomes a lot clearer as the game goes on, as do many other things. It can be confounding in the moment, and the smaller details can be difficult to pin down, but the big questions are all touched upon throughout the game. The answers are there. I sometimes see people write the game off as totally indecipherable, and I really don't think it's that obtuse. Take the plot of Angel, for example. It's not too hard to understand at broad strokes. The Killer 7 are sent to eliminate Heaven Smile and capture Kun Lan, but Kun Lan escapes and is able to continue creating more smiles. I think the best approach to take with this game is as follows. When you finish a chapter, think first about what happened in it and what the chapter was actually about. And then that'll give you a lens to go back and view the chapter through, so that scenes that previously confused you can make a bit more sense. I could tell I'd enjoy the game based purely on this chapter. My first time playing the game was just really magical. I was totally in love with the basic concept and just found it so damn cool. And Angel is just the tip of the iceberg with this game. So, if watching this got you interested in trying the game out, I can't recommend it enough. It's pretty cheap on Steam and goes on sale often. If you don't have a PC, then your options are kinda limited. It's not available on any modern consoles, but if you happen to have a GameCube, then you could play the original version, though it will almost certainly cost you more. Failing that, your last option is the PS2 version, though that one is widely considered to be the worst version of the game due to its lower quality graphics and longer loading times. But I wouldn't say it totally ruins the experience. My first playthrough was on PS2 and it didn't stop me from falling in love with the game. I didn't even know it was considered a bad version until after I finished it. So, yeah, I'm bad at writing outros. The next video I do on the following chapter will be the first real deep dive I'll be doing into this game's story. There's a lot to cover, so it may not come soon if I don't feel up to the task yet, but I am eager to discuss the rest of this game someday. So stay tuned, I guess.